For many, bodybuilding is synonymous with individuals who seem to push the limits of human physiology with massive and impressive physiques. However, there are those who argue that the true essence of the sport lies in symmetry and aesthetics, in bodies that, although smaller, adhere to classical standards with perfection. And if there's one name that embodies this idea, it's Frank Zane. He is widely considered the ideal classic bodybuilder, the aesthetic icon that many fans and enthusiasts of the sport still revere today. Competing during bodybuilding's golden era in the 1960s and 70s, Zane's physique was a combination of muscles, proportion, and flawless symmetry. His body didn't stand out for its extreme size, but for the visual harmony and balance he brought to the stage. He was the first to present this complete package at Mr. Olympia, revolutionizing the sport and setting a new standard that many still try to achieve today. What makes Frank Zane so special is that he was able to capture the essence of classic bodybuilders and elevate that concept to a new level. With sculpted muscles and a balanced physique, his proportions were nearly perfect. He carried about 185 pounds, 84 kilograms, of pure definition, something that set him apart from the muscle giants of the time. Zane not only won the Mr. Olympia title, but also helped shape the perception of what an aesthetic physique is, inspiring generations of athletes. His body was admired by women, imitated by men, and praised by IFBB judges, proving that beauty in bodybuilding goes far beyond size. But who is Frank Zane? How did he become the true king of aesthetics in the world of bodybuilding? Well, make sure to subscribe to the channel because I'm going to tell you the full story of this legend. And if you appreciate my work and want to see more videos like this one, consider becoming a channel member. Your contribution is essential to keep this project alive and motivates me to continue bringing quality content. Oh, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. This helps YouTube understand that you enjoy this kind of content and ensures you stay up to date with all the latest videos. Now, let's dive into the video. Frank Zane was born in Kingston, Pennsylvania, on June 28, 1942, a town marked by coal mining and the toughness of everyday life. During his adolescence, Zane was a shy and reserved young man, often struggling to find his place and balance. In his biography, he reveals that as a teenager, he got into a few fights, most of which ended with disastrous results. However, at the age of 14, his life took an unexpected turn. During a high school math class, Zane found an old bodybuilding magazine discarded in the trash. This simple moment was a turning point for the young man. Completely fascinated by the content, he read and reread the magazine countless times, promising himself that one day, he would have an impressive physique like the men he admired on its pages. Determined to transform his body, Frank Zane began his journey into bodybuilding by purchasing a set of 30-pound dumbbells, approximately 13.6 kilograms. These weights became his constant companion, as he carried them everywhere, ready to train at any moment. However, this new habit didn't sit well with his father, who believed the time spent training was interfering with Zane's responsibilities at home. His father often questioned him, suggesting that he could train by mowing the lawn or helping with household chores. Nevertheless, Frank remained steadfast in his determination. He trained with discipline, gaining about 66 pounds, 30 kilograms, of muscle between the ages of 14 and 17. By the time he graduated from high school in 1964, Frank Zane had already won several regional bodybuilding competitions, solidifying his reputation as one of the most promising talents on the scene. He was just beginning a journey that would forever change the sport. He was no longer the skinny teenager from before. Frank Zane, now weighing 185 pounds, around 83 kilograms, was in the best shape of his life. Motivated by his growing success in bodybuilding, Zane decided to move to California, where he could not only teach but also continue pursuing his dreams in the world of bodybuilding. However, it's interesting to note that bodybuilding was never Zane's only passion. For him, the sport functioned as a means of self-expression, almost like body art. Years later, Zane would compare bodybuilding to an art form, where the body becomes the blank canvas, meticulously sculpted through training and discipline. In 1965, Frank Zane achieved his first major title by winning the IFBB Mr. Universe. This victory was just the beginning of a long series of achievements in the sport. Living with his wife and fellow bodybuilder, Frank Zane, in California, both won numerous titles during the second half of the 1960s. For Frank, the victory at Mr. Universe was followed by first place at Mr. America in 1966 and 1967. Then, in 1968, he accomplished something that few athletes of the time could even dream of. Zane won both titles, Mr. Universe and Mr. America, in the same year. At that time, Mr. Olympia didn't yet hold the global status it has today as the most prestigious competition in bodybuilding. But during the 1960s, competitions like Mr. Universe and Mr. America were considered the most important on the international scene. Frank's victory in 1968 had an even bigger impact than many might have predicted. That's because one of the competitors in the Mr. Universe contest was none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Frank Zane is one of the rare athletes who can boast about having defeated Schwarzenegger, being one of only 3 to ever do so. According to Bodybuilding.com, Arnold Schwarzenegger was completely frustrated by his loss to Frank Zane, finishing in second place. His frustration was so intense that he even called Zane a chicken with 17-inch arms. However, once his anger subsided, Arnold began to understand something that would change how he approached bodybuilding: the importance of a balanced physique. This was precisely what Zane had been perfecting since the early years of his career. He prioritized symmetry, aesthetics, and conditioning above all else. While Arnold was focused on size, Zane represented a more refined ideal. This more artistic view of bodybuilding was what set him apart from the beginning, and Schwarzenegger realized there was much to learn from Zane, even though, at that moment, the defeat still weighed on his ego. Now established in California, Frank Zane began training alongside other great names from the golden era of bodybuilding, such as Arnold himself, Franco Columbu, and Ed Corney, among many others. These athletes formed an elite circle of bodybuilding, training together, exchanging ideas, and influencing each other in ways that shaped an entire generation. But while Arnold and Columbu focused on increasing muscle size and volume, Zane remained faithful to his concept of symmetry and proportion. This soon caught the attention of Joe Weider, one of the most influential figures in the world of bodybuilding and responsible for launching the careers of many athletes at the time. Impressed by Zane's physique, Joe Weider decided to offer opportunities that went beyond competitions, such as writing articles, photo shoots, and sponsorships. This allowed Frank to gain more visibility in the community, both as an athlete and as an aesthetic reference. Although Zane was never officially classified as a Weider-exclusive athlete, the two maintained a close relationship. Zane even sought Joe's advice on posing and training techniques, as Weider had a keen eye for what worked best on stage. By the early 1970s, Zane had already secured another Mr. Universe title and began to stand out in the Mr. Olympia, frequently finishing in the top 5 in the under 200 pounds, around 90 kilograms, category. However, it was precisely at this point in his career that the differences between Zane and Joe Weider began to emerge. Joe was always a proponent of size in bodybuilding, prioritizing bulky and muscular bodybuilders who could fill the stage with their physical presence. To him, bodybuilding was a display of brute strength and visual impressiveness. Frank Zane, on the other hand, viewed the sport in a completely different way. For him, bodybuilding was an art form, where the body was sculpted with precision to achieve an almost perfect aesthetic. He prioritized symmetry, proportions, and definition, something that set him apart from the larger athletes. This clash of philosophies became evident when Zane started competing more frequently at the Mr. Olympia. Although Joe appreciated Frank's aesthetics, he often pushed him to gain more size and volume. But Zane never gave in. He was determined to follow his vision of what bodybuilding should be, a perfect balance between form, function, and aesthetics. Still, this resistance brought challenges. In an environment where size seemed to be the priority, Zane faced criticism and pressure to fit into the mold of larger and more massive bodybuilders. However, this decision to remain true to his philosophy ended up being Frank Zane's defining factor. His commitment to symmetry and aesthetics set him apart in a sea of muscular giants, and he became one of the most admired and respected athletes of his generation. But before reaching the top, he had to overcome the last and greatest obstacle of his career, something that would define his trajectory in the sport and turn him into a bodybuilding legend. In 1976, the world of bodybuilding was undergoing a transformation. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the six-time Mr. Olympia champion, had retired, leaving the door open for a new champion to emerge. Many believed that this moment would mark the rise of Frank Zane, who seemed poised to capture the long-awaited title. The 1976 Mr. Olympia, held in Columbus, Ohio, was a true testament that bodybuilding requires much more than just muscles. Zane took the stage with an incredibly shredded, muscular, and perfectly symmetrical physique. In the eyes of many, he was the natural candidate for the title, if not the absolute favorite. However, the competition was fierce. Arnold's training partner and a bodybuilding legend in his own right, Franco Columbu, stepped out of the Austrian star's shadow to claim his first Mr. Olympia title. Franco, competing directly against Zane in the under 198 pounds, 90 kilograms category, narrowly defeated Frank, leaving many surprised by the outcome. Zane, who up until then seemed to be on the path to victory, had to cope with the most frustrating defeat of his career. The 1976 competition served as a reminder of how unpredictable and challenging bodybuilding can be. Shortly after his victory, Franco Columbu announced his retirement, once again leaving the bodybuilding crown waiting for a new owner. Now seen as the true heir to the throne, Zane was not shaken by the narrow defeat. On the contrary, he used it as motivation. Determined to correct what he considered a minor flaw in his physique, Zane dedicated himself to training like never before, almost as if possessed by an unstoppable force. His workouts were intense, meticulous, and the focus on every detail of his body was evident. The result of this relentless effort came the following year. In 1977, Frank Zane once again took the stage at Mr. Olympia, but this time, there were no doubts. He was in the best shape of his life, both physically and mentally. Finally, Zane captured the long-desired Mr. Olympia title, marking the beginning of his reign at the top of bodybuilding. Despite facing fierce competition from major names like Ed Corney, Robbie Robinson, and Boyer Coe, Frank Zane presented an almost flawless physique at the 1977 Mr. Olympia. In a sport that had been dominated by giants like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Zane brought a new perspective, changing perceptions about what defined a champion physique. The flow and symmetry of his body were completely different from Arnold or Franco Columbu. While both were known for their enormous musculature, Zane stood out for his proportion and impeccable aesthetics. For this reason, both fans and experts began comparing Zane to the ideal statues of ancient Greece or Rome, further solidifying his position as one of the greatest bodybuilders in history. What truly marked Zane's dominance was his iconic vacuum pose. While other athletes had used this pose in the past, Zane executed it with such perfection that it became almost synonymous with his name. His ability to display this pose with mastery captured the essence of his aesthetic philosophy in bodybuilding, where absolute control of the body combined with near-divine symmetry. He continued his victorious trajectory, winning Mr. Olympia again in 1978 and 1979, cementing himself as a true legend in the sport. Coming off an excellent year, Zane was more motivated than ever for the 1980 Mr. Olympia. However, a series of events, many of which were incredibly controversial, prevented him from claiming his fourth title. During his preparation for the competition, Frank suffered an unusual and extremely painful injury when he slipped on the edge of a pool, resulting in a severe urethral cut. This led to a lengthy hospital stay and significant muscle loss. Concerned about his performance, Zane sought advice from Arnold Schwarzenegger, who encouraged him to compete. However, this decision soon became controversial, especially since Arnold also competed that year and, surprisingly, won his seventh title. The 1980 competition is seen as a turning point in bodybuilding, marking not only Arnold's return, but also the end of Zane's era as the undisputed champion. The controversy surrounding this victory was so intense that Zane, along with other big names like Mike Mincer and Boyer Coe, decided to boycott the 1981 Mr. Olympia, which was won by the late Franco Columbu. Zane returned to competition in 1982, where he finished second, but in 1983, a new injury hindered his training, and he ended up in fourth place, marking the close of his competitive era in the sport. After retiring from competitive bodybuilding, Frank Zane devoted his time to various passions that continued to shape his life and legacy. He became deeply involved in teaching and personal training, helping new generations of bodybuilders achieve their goals, always with a focus on symmetry and aesthetics. In addition, Zane also dedicated himself to music, another of his great passions. For fans and enthusiasts of the sport, he brought a new level of definition and proportion that helped redefine the concept of the ideal body in bodybuilding. His physique was living proof of his unique training philosophy, which balanced discipline, mind, and body in perfect harmony. Today, at 80 years old, Zane carries with him a legacy that transcends the sport, immortalizing himself as one of bodybuilding's greatest legends. Frank Zane's impact goes far beyond the trophies he won. He changed the way people view bodybuilding, placing aesthetics and symmetry on the same level of importance as muscle size. His ideas influenced an entire generation of athletes, and to this day, he continues to inspire both veterans and newcomers to the sport. And with that, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for 2,000 subscribers on the channel. I'm thrilled about this milestone and all the support you've given my work. We're growing together, and this is only possible because of you. Every subscription, like, and comment makes all the difference. Now, I want to hear from you. Does Frank Zane's physique inspire you as well? What do you think of his approach to bodybuilding? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about it. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to share it with a friend who needs to see this content too. That helps me a lot to keep bringing videos like this to you. Oh, and before you go, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps with exposure and motivates me to keep delivering the best content for you. See you next time.